idea for the show.
I still don't know what the idea is.
It's about nothing.
Right.
Everybody's doing something. We'll do nothing.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Cross Coast Bias presents the League About Nothing podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We have our Week 15 recap show. First round of the playoffs are in the books. A couple of heavy hitter matchups going on in the winner's bracket, and a couple of things we're not going to talk about happening over in the loser's bracket. First off, congratulations to Mel Crisp and our very own Alvarez 13, who both advanced this week in the playoffs. Our condolences to JMC and Judd, who both took a loss in that first round matchup there. How do you feel about moving on to the second round?
Better than not moving on?
Oh, man. What a rousing start that was. Oh, well, you had the high score this week. You put up a 255.73. You had the highest score in the league.
Great. Survive in advance. That's all we're worried about.
Before we get to those playoff recaps and those matchups, we've got a couple of trades to break down and some injuries to go over and recap and see how they're going to affect the last couple of weeks of the playoffs here. There were not as many trades this last week as I think you or I expected. We only have two to cover. And
it's because they all happened a couple of days before.
So we're going to hop right into that first one. December 13th, this was the big one. Judd and I made a trade. I acquired Judd's 2024 fifth round pick. Judd acquired superstar Easton Stick.
Superstar. Yeah, Judd went on a trading spree. I mean, for him, he had more trades in a week than he had in the last probably 3 years combined.
Yep. That was his second trade in 2 days, we should note. He had traded on the 12th as well.
Yeah, he did everything he could to solidify his bench. Didn't help him win, but everybody that he traded for in the last couple of days pretty much all made his lineup.
Yeah, Easton Stick was in there. His quarterback won. And
yeah,
he outscored his opponent's quarterback one as well. So you can't fault him for trying.
Yeah, he did everything he could. All those guys ended up making a lineup. They were all good trades for the week at least.
Yeah, and he didn't give away any major assets. A fifth round pick is basically useless.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to miss a fifth round pick.
Our other trade, also taking place on December 13th, involved you. You picked up Tyler Boyd and Josh Palmer from Mr. Good News, and you sent out Andrew Ogletree and your 2024 third round pick. Oh, it wasn't your third round pick. Excuse me. Was it Flinch's that I recall it being?
None of my picks are my own picks.
Yeah, it was a 2024 third round pick. I usually write down whose roster the pick is attached to. I forgot to do so this time.
It was Flinch's pick.
There you go. So you picked up a couple of wide receivers. Mr. Good News gets, I'm sure the third round pick was his primary goal there, but he also gets a young tight end who is in the messiest tight end room in the league. So
4-man rotation. He's played well in spurts. I mean, none of those guys really gets enough playing time. So who knows what the depth chart shakes out to be next year, but it's always good to take a gamble on a young tight end who's at least shown some promise.
Yeah, and he's a better
on your bench.
Exactly. He's a better ad than the random free agents that are out there who are never going to play.
Right. Yeah, the big piece obviously was Josh Palmer. News came out that Keenan Allen was going to miss the Thursday night game last week, so I made a move to try to get some more wide receiver depth. I knew I was going to be down Chris Olave and had some other guys banged up, so needed to add some depth, and the price was right. That's what I was willing to pay. I was just trying to get whatever the best receiver I could for that third round pick. Turned out to be Palmer, who started real slow, but then had an 80-yard touchdown on the busted coverage. So he made my lineup. I'll take it.
It's going to help when your guy catches a 79-yard touchdown from superstar Easton Stick.
Right. When they're down 60 points.
What an awful game that was. It was just absolutely wild from start to finish.
Yeah. Not great for the Chargers. Got their coach and GM fired.
Yeah.
pretty much immediately after the game.
I'm not sure they weren't fired at halftime.
Yeah, they may have been. They did not get
That
to fly
was
home on the team plane.
Yeah, that was
Left them at the airport.
You're fired. Now go out there and finish this game.
Right. May have been fired before this game based on how the team came out. He looked a little flat.
Yeah, and ended up with a nice week from Palmer. He was in your lineup as your wide receiver too. That'll certainly help you move along. Them good contribution to your high score there. But anyway, that's the end of the trades. There wasn't anything else. Part of this is because all of you folks in the playoffs have already spent all your picks. Some cases, literally.
Yeah,
Looking at you, Flea.
There's not a lot of picks to be sold at this point in the season, and there's a lot less buyers every week. Every week it gets whittled down.
The last team to get eliminated in the regular season, Flinch, isn't really in a position where I think he wants to sell because he was right on the cusp of the playoffs there. He's probably pretty confident in his team going forward. You don't want to just sell for the sake of selling. You want to sell if there's an advantage to your team.
Yeah, he was right on the fringes of the playoffs, so no reason to tear that team down. Could very well be a playoff team next year with some minor changes.
As we normally get to the waivers here, there are no waivers worthy of discussing. I'm pretty sure I saw you add Braxton Berrios again. Please stop doing that.
It wasn't me this time. It was Mel.
Mel, please stop doing that.
He outbid me. I tried to add him back.
That's what it was.
Mel outbid me.
Art, don't you have no fab for like the last 2 months anyways?
I never have fab. I'm out of fab before the season starts.
So again, all of you, please, for the love of God, stop adding Berrios. We don't need to do this. No one is forcing you. It'll be okay.
He had a catch this week.
Great.
No Tyreek Hill. I thought maybe he would do more than one catch, but hey, it's Braxton Berrios. What do you expect?
Very little. Let's recap some of the injuries that took place across the league this week. Some pretty important fantasy ones here, but not a ton that will be impacting our playoffs. Start like we normally do at the quarterback position. Will Levis left with an ankle injury.
He got banged up late in overtime. He got his leg twisted up on a sack.
They're saying it's an ankle injury. There's reports already that it's unlikely that he plays this coming week. So I suppose that means we'll see Ryan Tannehill again.
Yeah, if it's a high ankle sprain, which it looked like, probably won't play, but that's what we thought about Trevor Lawrence. He played on it, so I guess
that's true. And,
TBD.
Yeah, I'm sure that Will Levis does not want to miss any games after basically just getting the starting job.
Yeah, and the Titans really need to see what they have in him because they're going to have a high pick, and it's going to be a pretty deep quarterback class. So they got to figure out if he's the guy or not. And he needs every game he has to continue this audition.
Yeah, he's put some interesting film on tape. I don't know how the team is going to view it, but he's had some moments so far. Should be interesting.
It does impact Big. He's one of the plethora of quarterbacks that Big has accumulated.
He's got a lot of depth. He doesn't have a lot of talent.
He's gone with a quantity over quality approach at quarterback. So he's got like 10 of them. In best ball, you can get away with that. You only need 1 or 2 to have decent games every week. Doesn't have to be the same guys.
Well, I believe it was Joseph Stalin who said that quantity has a quality all its own. And any chance we can get to compare Big to Soviet leaders, that's an opportunity we've got to take.
Right. I'm not saying Big is a communist, but
let's see what Criddle makes of this one.
Clearly follows some of the doctrines.
Our tight ends. Anyway, so a couple other injuries at the quarterback position. Zach Wilson left the Jets game with what was later reported as a concussion, but was also reported as other things on the broadcast. So
they called it dehydration at one point.
I think that's strange.
He got hit so hard in the head that his body lost all water, apparently. That's what they were trying to say.
I'm not a doctor, but I don't think that's how that works.
That's what the Jets were saying.
Yeah. Well, what I would really love to know is how much of the fact that they've just backed Zach Wilson over and over and over, and specifically Robert Saleh doing it, how much of that came from Saleh's actual belief? How much of that came from either the owner or the GM or whoever basically being like, you have no choice, you have to? I want to know, like, blame pie, basically, of who is the one continuously foisting Zach Wilson upon an unwilling nation.
I think the problem is there's no choice.
Well,
they tried to replace him. They went out and got Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no. But like after the Rodgers injury, like even like 2 or 3 weeks after the fact, after they'd acquired Simeon and had a chance to give him a week or two to practice, and they were still just being like, nope, Zach's our guy. He's going to get us there. He's developing, whatever.
Because he's still the best option, unfortunately.
No, but like
we saw Tim Boyle play. We've seen Trevor Siemian play. They're not better than Zach Wilson.
No one on this planet ever thought that Tim Boyle was the answer. But like we've seen Trevor Siemian be more competent than Zach Wilson. That is damning with faint praise.
He's not looked good this year.
No, he's not looked good this year.
He's looked worse than Zach Wilson.
The play that he had put on tape from the past was superior to what Zach Wilson was doing at the time. Now, maybe that didn't match what he was doing in practice, because obviously once he came in this year, he was just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah.
But
and we saw Simeon get cut by the Bengals and the Bears in the last calendar year. Two teams who could have used a quarterback.
I don't know what you're talking about. Browning is out there slinging it.
Browning, shockingly, has been competent.
And even Bagent was fine for a backup. Like, he wasn't good, but if he's your backup, you're not like terrible.
He was clearly better than Simeon. Both of these guys were.
Exactly.
So that's why Simeon was on the streets.
So, but if you're telling me the Jets could have had Bagent or Browning, they'd have signed up for that.
Right.
Over Wilson. So being worse than those guys does not necessarily mean that he's worse than Wilson. But my point was, every time I saw him come out and re-endorse Wilson, I'm like, is there someone standing behind Robert Saleh with a gun right now?
Blink twice.
Like every time I just, or if
Saleh.
this is actually what he believes, I would love to know that. And we are probably never going to know. Well,
no.
Unless Saleh gets fired soon, we're probably never going to know.
Yeah, but even then, these guys, they want to keep jobs, so
no, it'll get
throw other people under the bus.
It'll get leaked after the fact once he's signed on as a coordinator with whoever or something, if that happens. And I don't want the guy to lose his job. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but
I think that they don't have any choice but to prop him up, because
that's fair.
Their careers are depending on him, unfortunately for them.
True. All right, we've spent enough time on Zach Wilson. Let's move on.
Yes, please.
Another quarterback injury. Trevor Lawrence exited with a concussion as well. Or actually, he didn't exit. This was reported after the fact.
Yeah, after the game.
And as someone who watched that game and watched him continuously throw relatively easy passes in the dirt, this does not come as a shock.
He didn't look limited by the ankle, but he did look limited by his decision-making.
It reminded me of Mahomes in the second half of the playoff game. What was it, last year, 2 years ago? Where all of a sudden he just couldn't do anything, and it came out afterwards that he had a concussion.
Yeah.
And that it might have happened in the first half and not been reported and things like that. But it reminded me of that. I thought about it while I was watching, and then after the fact, I was like, oh yeah, that absolutely tracks. So unfortunate for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. They're in the midst of a playoff race here. They've
fallen out.
Him back.
They had control of that division a couple of weeks ago, and now they're in a three-way tie, right?
I mean, they were alive for the 1 seed 2 weeks ago. Well, not that they couldn't theoretically get back into that, but they would need help and luck, which they didn't before. But the South right now, they're a three-way tie, 8-6, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Houston. Currently, Jacksonville is 4-1 in the division, and Indy is 3-2. Houston is 2-2. So they do control their own destiny for the division if they all finish with the same record there. They just need to get that fifth win, and no one can catch them.
Yeah, the problem is they have to win games.
Yeah. So.
And now they'll probably have to do it without Trevor Lawrence. Not on a playoff team in our league anymore since I traded him away.
No, it's not.
So not going to impact us.
Nope. But, there are pieces that are affected by this. Obviously, the pass catchers, the running back, all that sort of stuff. And those pieces are on playoff teams.
Lowers the ceiling for the whole offense.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. Speaking of that offense and its pieces, Zay Jones had a hamstring injury.
Yeah, it didn't look great. He pulled up lame trying to chase down a deep pass late in the fourth quarter.
Didn't come back in. Don't really have a timetable on hamstrings, but on the injury. But hamstrings can be pretty tricky, and it would not shock if he didn't come back for a while.
Yep, I think he's probably not going to play this week at least, which matters to Mel because he's on Mel's roster.
Indeed.
And any hit to the depth at this point in the season is just crushing.
Well, speaking of wide receivers on Mel's roster, he lost the big one. Jamar Chase with an AC joint sprain in his shoulder.
Yeah, it didn't look good when it happened too.
No, it did not.
They were in a critical point in the game, and they ended up going to overtime and losing a very important game to the Browns for their playoff hopes for both teams. So clearly it was bad enough he couldn't go back in the game that he's not going to play this week at least, which again, that's crushing for Mel to lose multiple receivers.
Yeah, and obviously Chase is the number one receiver on every team except for yours.
Yeah, Chase is by far the most impactful loss here. So there's not really a lot you can do to replace that kind of production.
Exactly. And it costs him a stack as well because he's got Browning.
He's still got Hudson. He's got the Tanner Hudson. He's fine.
No, but the super stack is gone.
Right. Yeah.
A couple other injuries at the wide receiver position. Hollywood Brown injured his heel. I did not see this one happen.
He's been fighting the heel injury for weeks now. Even the bye week didn't help. He's been very ineffective. He got shut out for, I think, only the second time of his career, the last time they played. And then he had the bye week to heal up, supposedly, but didn't help. He had to leave this game as well. So at this point, they may be forced to just kind of shut him down.
Yeah. They're not playing for anything anyways. It might be better for him and the team.
Right, yeah. Unfortunately for Flea, he was a big piece of her team early in the season when he was healthy. And we were hoping that when Kyler got back, it would take him to another level, but he's just been banged up the whole time Kyler's been here.
Yeah, so a little ding to her playoff depth there, but and maybe they don't shut him down. Maybe he's back. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. He's been fighting to play through it the last few weeks. So I'm sure if he can, he'll give it a shot.
The only update I can find on Hollywood is that they're not going to put him on IR.
No,
so I guess that's good.
It's not promising for this week, though.
No.
If they're even considering it, and it's even come up as a question.
No, that's not what you want. Another wide receiver injury. Jaden Reed hurt his toe, exited the game, didn't come back. They're starting to get a little thin at wide receiver in Green Bay.
I've been surprised with the depth of their rotation this year, to be honest. They had a lot of late round undrafted guys that have been contributors. Wicks, Malik Heath, a lot of these unheralded late round undrafted guys have really chipped in, stepped up in a big way. But yeah, now down Watson, now down Reed. They're losing a lot of the top of their depth chart. That's more Romeo Doubs. And Luke Musgrave is down, so more Tucker Kraft.
Last wide receiver injury we wanted to note was Michael Pittman, who exited with a concussion on a very, very scary hit there. That was not pleasant.
Yeah, the guy that hit him got suspended.
Yeah, that's
well-earned suspension.
He's had a couple of incidents already as well, I think, is the reason for the suspension.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes.
They don't like to suspend players even when it's necessary.
Yeah, this one definitely deserved one, though. It was just unnecessary and ugly. So that's a big loss for the Colts offense. I mean, this guy was a target hog for them all year, seeing one of the highest target shares of any player in the league.
Yeah,
he's on Georgia Mike's roster, so it's not going to be super impactful. But yeah, there's not really a replacement on the Colts roster. They're not very deep at wide receiver to begin with.
It's true. They that is not an overly talented wide receiver room.
And Isaiah McKenzie just got suspended today as well.
I saw that they brought in Jarvis Landry today.
Jarvis Landry, that's a name that we haven't heard for a while.
No, so I mean,
they do need a slot receiver.
Maybe they'll sign him. I mean, they're in the midst of a playoff race. Right? They're tied for the division lead. Like they're trying to win still. This isn't just like, oh, we need bodies to catch some balls. Like, no, they're actually trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're in a 3-way tie for first place in the division.
Pittman himself isn't on a playoff roster, but Flea has Gardner Minshew, who obviously is throwing the ball there, and she's got Jonathan Taylor, who should be coming back soon,
and Josh Downs as well.
You want that offense to move exactly, like, and Mel has Zach Moss on his team, who is also injured. We'll get to him in a second, but like, losing your number one wide receiver and your really only very good wide receiver, it's a big loss for that offense.
Yeah, we'll see how long he misses. I'm guessing it's going to be at least this week. We'll see if there's any long-term effects. See if it's like a CJ Stroud situation who they have already ruled out again 2 weeks now, for this week. Yeah. He's still having headaches. He can't get past the first step of the concussion protocol, unfortunately.
Listen, I'm sure that they would rather Stroud sit and fully recover and not risk the health of their franchise quarterback for the future.
Right. They got to do the smart thing and play for the long term, but it's hard when you have a
legitimate shot at the playoffs. Yeah. As someone who has Houston in a parlay of teams not to make the playoffs, I'm okay with just shut them down for the year.
Come on, Case Keenum.
The other two legs of that are definitely hitting. It was like Carolina and Chicago or something like that.
Carolina's already been mathematically eliminated. Chicago is on the doorstep.
Yeah, Chicago under was one of my pretty big bets this year going into things. All right, so in that same game that we just mentioned with Pittman, Zach Moss hurt his shoulder. So now they're already down Jonathan Taylor, who's been out after having surgery on his thumb. Now they could be without Zach Moss as well. Yeah,
it was an ugly horse collar tackle as he was scoring a touchdown. He got kind of ripped down from behind, hurt his arm and shoulder. It looked like he fell on the same arm that he had broken early in the season. So I guess
I was listening to the game at the time. I was at work and I was listening to the broadcast. They were talking about that, how it was the same arm.
Yep. So it looks like we're gonna if we don't get Johnny Taylor back, we're gonna see some Trey Sermon as the feature back with Tyler Goodson.
And actually, both of those guys ran the ball pretty well after Moss left. Like,
yeah, I kind of like Tyler
numbers
Goodson.
Were pretty good.
Tyler Goodson at Iowa coming out. He was good in the Big Ten. Didn't get drafted. He had a good combine. He's got great straight line speed, and he was a pretty good receiver. So it's possible we'll see the two in tandem again this week.
He's on my watch list on Sleeper. So apparently I liked him at some point.
I'm pretty sure that I've rostered him at some point.
Let's take a look. History. Oh man, you rostered him
probably many times.
3, 4, 5 different times, starting from November 2022 through March of this year.
All right, yeah. See, I did like him. Coming out.
Sure. Well, you've got the opportunity to add him on waivers now with a $0 bid.
There's already a claim in. Don't worry.
I was in fact not worried, but also I can confirm you will not be adding him. I can confirm already that is the case.
As you up your bid to $1.
I know I don't have to up it. It was
that's true. I was gonna say you probably have the.
You have no fab left. I could bid 0 and still get him from you.
That's right. You do have the tiebreaker. Yeah. Waiver priority for ties.
Last running back injury we want to get to, Keaton Mitchell tore his ACL. That's tough. You hate to see guys tear ACLs. Hate to see guys get hurt at all. But.
Especially at this point in the season, because now he's not going to be ready, or he'll struggle to be ready at the start of next year. He had really carved out a role, as an undrafted rookie. You have to take advantage when you get a chance to make sure you stick around. And now this puts him behind trying to make the team again next year and carve out a role for himself.
I don't know what it is about Baltimore. They just cannot keep a running back healthy.
Right. Maybe time to replace the training staff. I know there was a lot of rumbles about that from guys like Rashad Bateman the last few years and many other Baltimore Ravens. I'm not sure if they did replace their training staff, but I know they did that NFL survey and they were rated as the worst by the players.
That survey produced some interesting revelations.
Right. You get to see who the real cheapskate owners are.
Yeah. With apologies to Big, it appears to be the biggest cheapskates are the Arizona Cardinals.
You mean that's not normal to charge players for their lunches at the team facilities?
What a move that was.
That'll be $6.50, please.
That is real company store energy right there, honestly.
Gotta love the Bidwells.
No, you don't.
No.
I wonder if Baltimore does anything other than what they've already done and elevate your boy
Melvin Gordon time. He's
Listen,
back.
He's available for one fab. Anyone who wants him, come call him.
Well,
Listen, they're going to sign Justin Forsett next, so it's okay.
Justin Forsett. Oh.
Shout out 2014. All right, that does it for the injuries. Let's take a look at our playoff matchups. The bye weeks went to Big and Flea, so they got free passes this week while the rest of you peasants duked it out.
The rest of us had to earn it.
So as I mentioned off the top, you were our highest scoring team this week. You put up a 255.73. You beat JMC, who put up a 198.57.
Yeah, avenged my loss from last week. That knocked me out of the bye. Thanks, JMC. You made me earn it this week. But at least my team showed up.
Yeah, you had some pretty big games. Jared Goff leading the way for you, 35 points. Finally, without Tyreek Hill active, you got a massive game from Waddle, who put up a 32-point day.
Right, and that hurt JMC directly because Tyreek has been the single most impactful player on a weekly basis in this league. And
I think in every league.
Transferred almost immediately to Waddle this week. So that was a big net gain for me versus JMC.
Oddly enough, you did have Tua and he did make your lineup. The stack was really not that helpful for you because outside of the damage that Waddle did, Tua did basically nothing else.
Yeah, well, like I expected last week, it was mostly going to be Raheem Mostert. He scored a couple of touchdowns. That's how you beat the Jets, is by running the ball. And the Jets offense can't score any points, so there's usually a lot of running.
Yeah, 30-0 was it? Yeah,
not much of a threat. They didn't play the entire fourth quarter, so there wasn't a lot of passing need in this game.
No. Should be interesting to see. They play the Dallas Cowboys this week, who just got run into the ground by the Buffalo Bills last week. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Miami this time around.
Yeah, the Dolphins are very happy to run it 50 times a game. That's where their offense stems from. It's all off of the run.
And I'd imagine we see Hill back this week as well.
Yeah, he's
too late to help JMC, unfortunately.
He's chasing 2,000 yards. He wants to play.
I'm sure he does, and I don't want to say I think he's going to get it because he's going to run out of time essentially, but he still has a legitimate shot. He's 400 yards short with 3 games to go now.
The fact that they took it to the wire, and he was basically a game time decision, makes me think that he's probably close enough that he's going to play this week.
Yeah. If this had been a playoff week, I have zero doubt whatsoever that he would have played.
Right. But they probably said, well, we can give him another week. It's only the Jets. They really didn't need him.
It's fair. They did not. So the rest of your team, solid weeks. You had a good performance out of Jahmyr Gibbs, 25.8 points. Your RB2, a little thin. Ezekiel Elliott, 9.6. How you feeling about your running back depth at this stage of the year?
Yeah, I probably need another running back. I mean, I've needed running backs all season, so not shocking. I mean, I'm relying on Ezekiel Elliott as one of my main running backs. He's getting in my lineup pretty much every week since I traded for him. Not always because of merit.
I'm looking at your other available running backs.
Yeah, there's not much there.
It tops out at 7 points from Cordell Patterson.
Right, who I picked up minutes before the game started.
Yeah, who had 5 carries for -2 yards.
Yeah, it's not good. That was my third best running back. He had negative yards on the
So
week.
not your only running back who had negative yards. Deonta Foreman, 6 carries, -6 yards. I didn't even see that stat line until this very minute.
Yep, was not a banner day for my running backs, as has been the case for most of the season. My wide receivers generally do the heavy lifting, but somebody has to be in that spot. Something that I would probably like to address if I continue in the playoffs, which I am. I would like to try to add some more bodies there.
I'm sure that there are at least some players available to you. I don't know exactly which ones and from whom, but spend the right picks, and I'm sure you'll be able to get something in there.
Right. There's definitely guys out there. I'm in talks with several teams, so we'll see what happens.
Melvin Gordon.
Right. Can he gain positive yards? He can probably help me.
He can gain positive yards, but he is then going to fumble.
Oh, well. See, that's negative points, so that doesn't really help.
Well, you said, can he gain positive yards? Not positive points. I'm not a magician.
I did not specify. That's fair.
So on JMC's side of things, it's the story of the entire year for him. His studs showed up. The rest of his team did not. He doesn't have the depth that he needed to get over that hump.
Yeah, it was going to be tough. He's had kind of a cap on his scoring this year for the most part, besides last week when he just crushed me. But for the rest of the season, he's been hovering around 200, 210, topping out there pretty much every week. So if I had a good week like I did, it was going to be tough for him to win. He just doesn't have the depth. Without Tyreek Hill as well, Kelsey had a down game. There wasn't a lot he was going to be able to do, unfortunately.
Exactly. And he's since put a bunch of players on the trade block. He's got an older roster, some guys that are on the back end like Kelsey, and he's got Latavius Murray on his team. Some older assets, which I think he's going to try to divest himself of and look towards the future. The question is anyone buying right now? And if they are, what can he actually get for them?
Yeah, that's a problem. He's going to need to be creative, most likely. There's not a lot of draft picks out there to be had, but I'm sure he's open to taking younger players. He's not trying to tear the thing down to the studs. He's got a good team. Obviously, he won the whole thing last year, and he's a playoff team again this year. He really needs to figure out how to multiply his assets, right? He's very top heavy. So I'm sure that's probably what he's looking to do.
We've seen him make plenty of moves last year when he was trying to assemble his championship roster. He's not afraid to make some trades. So I'm sure we'll have some reporting to do on his roster within the coming weeks.
Yep, that would be my guess. We're gonna, as teams get knocked, we'll see another round of trading. We'll probably see something this week, at least a few trades.
All right, so over to the other matchup. As we said before, Mel beat Judd. Mel's team put up a 228.48. Judd had a 207.79. So a little bit of a closer matchup here and a little bit lower scoring, but still, Mel gets the win. He advances to the next round. Some interesting pieces being featured in this lineup. You mentioned it when we were talking about the trades that Judd made. Those trades directly impacted his score this week in a very major way. He had a bunch of pieces that he just acquired prominently featured, as did Mel.
Yeah, Easton Stick, Ty Chandler, Darius Slayton. I mean, a lot of these guys he literally picked up a few days before this matchup, and they all got in his lineup. He's kind of faded towards the back half of the season. He was in the pole position for the top seed for most of the season. So he did manage to pick up a few contributors this week, but just wasn't enough. He really hasn't been able to figure out the tight end position all year. That came back to bite him this week. He had Taysom Hill in there with 2 points and Kate Otten with 8 points. So not enough when you're in the playoffs and you're facing very good lineups every week.
Exactly. He had some big boom performances in there, but just the depth is what sunk his season essentially.
Yeah, and Mel managed to get some big weeks from guys he got basically for nothing. Jake
literally
Browning
off of waivers
for a 5th-round pick. Noah Brown for a 5th-round pick. These guys had big games for him. Tanner Hudson, he got off waivers.
Yep.
Robinson, he got off waivers.
Demarcus Robinson, $3 on December 5th. It's a big deal when you can add a legitimate starting player to your lineup for 3 fab on the eve of the playoffs.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, Mel, because as soon as I dropped him, he scored a touchdown every week since then.
Well done. Well done.
Wonderful. Wonderful roster management.
Yep. I find it interesting that both Judd and Mel recently acquired essentially backup quarterbacks who were thrust into a starting role, and Jake Browning and Easton Stick were the number ones for these playoff teams.
Right. Not what we expected the beginning of the season, to have some playoff teams led by Easton Stick and Jake Browning. No. Or even, a few weeks ago, we weren't expecting.
I didn't expect to have to say those names this year.
But here we are. Thankfully for Mel, Jake Browning was carrying Josh Allen.
Especially Mel's team, who is
Josh Allen
came
and Justin
into the
Fields.
year. with Josh Allen, Justin Fields, Geno Smith as his QB3, and Mac Jones, who was a starter, as his QB4. Nope. Yep. QB1, Jake Browning.
Yep. Hey, well.
If it works, it works, I guess. Those are the 2 matchups for this week. Going into next week, Big got the number 1 seed, so Mel will play Big this week. And Flea had the number 2 seed, so you will play Flea this week. You were the 3 seed. Mel was the 5 seed.
We'll get to see the top 2 seeds in action this week, and they're both going to be heavy favorites.
Yeah, it's difficult to actually get a projection of score because of the volatility of best ball. You can set a lineup and look at what the projected score is, but that's not exactly the most infallible method for projecting best ball matchups.
Yeah, you got to take into account the entire roster, top to bottom, because anybody can make the lineup any week, as we've seen. I mean,
yeah,
saw it this
just
week.
It just takes one boom game, and all of a sudden that projection is completely inaccurate.
The 4 teams that are left are probably the 4 best teams in the league. They're all very deep and very talented.
I think that's an accurate statement. I think before some injuries, you might have had an argument for Judd and JMC's team, but they basically both, the injuries mounted to the point where they were no longer quite in that top tier.
Yeah, they both suffered attrition over the course of this year and just haven't been able to plug enough holes to keep it going. So depth matters in best ball. I keep saying it, depth plays, especially in a league like this. And we've seen that bear out over the course of the season. The 2 teams that did more adding bodies than anyone else were Big and Flea, and they were the top 2 seeds.
So we've discussed it before. Flea has no picks remaining whatsoever. Like none this upcoming 24 draft, none in the 25, none in the 26. She has, her entire quiver is empty. She has no ability to add players via picks. She can still obviously trade players for players and things like that. But it seems like her roster is pretty fixed at what it is for the time being. The 3 other teams, Big's team, Mel's team, and your team, still have picks available to make trades and moves if you guys so choose and if things are available. So every year previous to now, we've had trading taking place during, even up to the finals, up to the, like last minute of the last game. It'll be interesting to see if there is as much of that this year as there has been in the past. I don't think there will be because so many assets have already been spent, but it's possible we see that last minute flurry.
Right. Most of the playoff teams have pretty much emptied the cupboards. So there's not a whole lot left to be spent. And a lot of these teams that would be selling have already sold everything. We're going to see potentially some of these teams that get eliminated, like JMC's got a couple of pieces he might want to sell. And then there'll be 2 more teams eliminated this week. We'll see if they have anybody that they actually want to get rid of, or if they want to keep everybody together since they made it this far. Not a lot of incentive to break up the team for next year.
No, when you're this solid of a team. It's generally better to just keep it going. You don't tear down unless you have to.
Right. So we'll see. There may be one or two trades still to come, but yeah, I wouldn't expect another big flurry like we saw when the regular season concluded.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of it. It'll be interesting to see who advances this week. We will all be watching closely, even those of us who have been eliminated for 6 months. Worst of luck to all of you, and may you all score 0 points.
Yeah, you don't want to cover the toilet bracket?
No, I think that's the toilet bowl. We don't want it. We don't want to talk about it. I hope I don't get it. That's it.
The one trophy everyone's trying to avoid.
Yeah, I don't want that on my record. So that brings us to the end of the podcast for the week. We do have a manager interview that we are in the process of editing.
A lengthy manager interview.
Yes, but we probably won't have that one finished in time. So hopefully we'll have that for everybody next week, and they'll get to enjoy that. Until next time, we'll see you soon.